Picture the scene. It is late December 2025. You are standing in the middle of the greatest illusion in financial history. On your screen, the numbers look green. The Dow Jones is hovering near all-time highs. The headlines are screaming about a soft landing and the resilience of the American consumer. Your 401k finally looks like it has recovered from the volatility of the last 3 years. But while you are celebrating the recovery, the architects of the global economy are quietly leaving the building. They aren't running. They aren't panicking. They are walking out the back door with a smile on their faces, locking the gates behind them. This isn't a theory. This is the Ark Strategy. It is the exact same playbook that has been used before every major wealth transfer in human history, from the panic of 1907 to the Great Crash of 1929 to the Great Recession of 2008. The billionaires know that the most dangerous moment in any market cycle isn't when the crash happens. The most dangerous moment is right before the crash, when the music is playing the loudest and the public is most confident. That is when the smart money offloads their risk onto the retail investor. And in December 2025, that transfer is almost complete. To understand the magnitude of what is happening right now, you have to look past the stock prices. You have to look at the flow of funds from the people who actually own the system. We are witnessing the most aggressive insider selling event since the dot-com bubble burst. But this time, it is different. In the past, insiders sold because they thought their company's earnings were going to miss targets. Today, they are selling because they believe the currency itself is broken. They are not rotating from tech stocks to energy stocks. They are rotating out of the financial system entirely. Look at the Walton family. For decades, they held their Walmart shares with diamond hands, understanding that their wealth was tied to the American consumer. But in the last 18 months leading up to December 2025, regulatory filings show a massive, systematic liquidation of equity. They are taking billions of dollars off the table. Why would the family that owns the barometer of American retail spending decide that cash and hard assets are safer than their own stock? Because they see the data on credit card defaults and consumer debt months before it hits the Wall Street Journal. Then look at the tech oligarchs. We talked about Jeff Bezos and Mark Zuckerberg, but the list is much longer. The founders of the biggest AI companies, the cloud computing giants, the semiconductor lords, they are all executing the same trade simultaneously. They are selling paper equity at record valuations and buying physical land, commodities, and sovereignty. They are building their arks. And the most terrifying part? They are doing it legally, right in plain sight, filing the Form 4s with the SEC, counting on the fact that the average investor is too distracted by the political circus to notice the exit. The Ark Strategy is not just about selling stocks. It is about where that money goes. When a billionaire sells $1 billion in stock, that money doesn't sit in a Wells Fargo checking account. That money moves immediately into assets that have no counterparty risk. This is the core concept you need to grasp to survive 2026. Counterparty risk is the risk that the person on the other side of your investment wouldn't be able to pay you. In a bank account, the bank is your counterparty. In a stock, the company is your counterparty. In a bond, the government is your counterparty. The Ark is built of assets that have zero counterparty risk. That is why we are seeing an unprecedented rush into productive farmland. Bill Gates started this trend years ago, but in 2024 and 2025, it went parabolic. We are seeing hedge funds, family offices, and tech billionaires buying hundreds of thousands of acres of water-rich agricultural land in states like Idaho, Montana, and the Dakotas. They aren't buying this land to develop condos. They are buying it to control the food supply and the water rights when the supply chains break down. Think about the timing. Why now? Why are the people with the best information in the world suddenly terrified of the US dollar and the US banking system? It is because they know the political timeline better than the pundits on cable news. They know that the events scheduled for early 2026 are not just political theater. They are mathematical triggers that will make the 2008 crisis look like a dress rehearsal. The Ark is their insurance policy against a government that has lost control of its checkbook. We have to talk about the psychology of this exit. The billionaire class relies on the greater fool theory to build their arks. They need someone to buy the stocks they are selling. They need someone to hold the bag. That someone is the pension funds and the retail investors who are passively investing in index funds. Every time you buy the S&P 500 in December 2025, you are providing the exit liquidity for a billionaire who is using your money to buy gold, silver, and bunkers. They are selling you a promise while they buy the reality. History tells us exactly how this plays out. In 1929, Joseph Kennedy, the father of JFK, famously sold his entire stock portfolio because a shoeshine boy gave him stock tips. He realized that when everyone is in the market, there is no one left to buy. Kennedy built his ark in cash and real estate. When the market collapsed, he didn't just survive. He became one of the richest men in America because he could buy distressed assets for pennies on the dollar. The billionaires of 2025 are studying Joseph Kennedy. They are positioning themselves to own the world after the reset. But the 2025 version of the Ark is more sophisticated than just cash. In fact, cash is considered a hot potato in this cycle. The ultra-wealthy are terrified of inflation. They know that when the crisis hits in 2026, the government's only response will be to print trillions of dollars. If your Ark is built of cash, it will burn down from the inside. That is why the allocation has shifted so heavily toward finite assets. They want things that cannot be printed by a central bank. This brings us to the sovereign individual component of the Arkansas. It's not just about what you own, it's about where you own it. We are seeing a massive flight of capital from Western Europe and blue US states into jurisdictions that respect property rights. The billionaires are moving their physical gold to Singapore. They are moving their digital assets to cold storage in Switzerland. They are moving their families to tax havens that have no extradition treaties for financial crimes. This is not paranoia. This is preparation for a global sovereign debt crisis. The media calls these people preppers or mocks them for building bunkers. But ask yourself, if the smartest people in the capitalist system, the people who built Amazon, Facebook, Tesla, and PayPal, are all betting on a collapse of the current order, why are you betting on the status quo? Why are you trusting a 60-40 portfolio of stocks and bonds when the people who issue those stocks and bonds are dumping them as fast as the law allows? The Ark Strategy is exclusive by design. It is not meant for the public. The doors to the Ark are open for a limited time, and the price of admission is rising every single day. In early 2024, you could buy gold at $2,000 an ounce. In December 2025, that price is gone forever. But the window hasn't slammed shut yet. You are standing on the dock. The ship is fueling up. The billionaires are already in their staterooms. The gangway is still down, but the crew is getting ready to pull it up. You have to understand that this is a silent evacuation. There will be no press release. There will be no warning from the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve's job is to keep you in the burning building so that the elites can escape. It is a Potemkin village economy. The facade looks beautiful, but behind the wall, the foundation is rotting. The billionaires are the ones looking behind the wall. They see the commercial real estate rot. They see the derivatives exposure. In the next part, we are going to expose the specific political trigger that is forcing this timeline. Because this isn't just about market cycles anymore. This is about a political deadlock in Washington that guarantees a default event in early 2026. The billionaires know the vote count. They know the legislation that is coming. And they know that when the gavel drops in Congress, the illusion will shatter instantly. The Ark is your only option. But you can't build an Ark if you don't know the flood is coming. Most people are looking at the weather report from yesterday. They are looking at lagging indicators like unemployment and GDP. The billionaires are looking at the leading indicators, liquidity flows, central bank balance sheets, and political instability. The storm is already on the radar. The waves are already building, and the captain has already left the bridge. We need to stop pretending that financial markets operate in a vacuum. The greatest lie sold to the American public is that the economy and politics are separate entities. In December 2025, they are colliding in a way that guarantees a catastrophe. The billionaires aren't just reading balance sheets. They are reading the whip count in the House of Representatives. They are watching a political car crash in slow motion, and they know exactly when the impact will occur. This is the political news case that nobody on cable news is willing to explain to you because it is too terrifying to say out loud. Here is the reality of the political landscape in late 2025. The United States government is currently operating under a continuing resolution, a temporary funding gap stop that has kicked the can down the road for the last 6 months. But that road ends in January 2026. And this time, there is no road left. The political gridlock in Washington has reached a level of toxicity that makes the 2011 debt ceiling crisis look like a friendly handshake. We have a divided Congress that is fundamentally incapable of passing a budget. Why is this different from every other government shutdown scare? Because of the math of the interest payments. This is the debt trap that the billionaires saw coming years ago. As of December 2025, the annual interest on the U.S. national debt has exceeded $1.6 trillion. Let that number sink in. We are now spending more on interest payments to bondholders than we spend on the entire U.S. military. We are spending more on interest than on Medicare. The debt is no longer a future problem. It is a mathematical impossibility right now. The political fight looming in January 2026 is over the Fiscal Responsibility Act. One faction of Congress is refusing to raise the debt ceiling unless there are 30% across-the-board cuts to federal spending. The other faction is refusing to cut a single dime and is demanding tax increases that will crush what is left of the economy. Neither side can blink. If they cut spending by 30%, the economy enters an immediate depression-level contraction. If they raise taxes and keep spending, inflation spirals out of control. This political deadlock creates the trigger event for the financial collapse. The billionaires know that on January 19, 2026, the Treasury Department will run out of extraordinary measures. This is where the banking crisis intersects with the political crisis. The regional banks are currently holding trillions of dollars in US Treasury bonds that they bought when interest rates were low. As the political chaos in Washington escalates, the value of those bonds is crashing. Who wants to lend money to a government that might default in 3 weeks? Nobody. So yields spike, bond prices crash, and the holes in the bank balance sheets get bigger. The billionaires are front-running the inevitable bail-in legislation. There is a quiet bill circulating in committees right now. You won't hear about it on the nightly news that discusses financial stability protocols. This is code for freezing bank withdrawals. The politicians know they cannot bail out the banks again with taxpayer money because the voters will revolt. So they are preparing to use depositor money to save the system. This is what happened in Cyprus in 2013, and it is coming to America in 2026. When the political trigger is pulled in January and the debt ceiling talks collapse, the first thing to freeze will be the money market funds. The billionaires have already pulled their capital out of money markets. They know that breaking the buck is a certainty when the Treasury defaults, even technically, for a few days. Imagine waking up to find your safe savings account is frozen by a government decree because Congress couldn't agree on a budget. That is the scenario the Ark is built to avoid. And we haven't even discussed the commercial real estate, CRE, political time bomb. The mayors of major cities like New York, San Francisco, and Chicago are begging the federal government for a bailout. Their tax bases have collapsed because office buildings are 50% empty. The property owners are walking away from the keys. The banks holding those mortgages are insolvent. The politicians are trying to delay the mark-to-market accounting rules until after the midterms, but the dam is breaking. The billionaires understand that the Federal Reserve is now a political prisoner. In the past, the Fed could just print money to solve these problems. But in December 2025, inflation is already creeping back up to 5% or 6%. If the Fed prints $2 trillion to bail out the commercial real estate market, inflation goes to 15%. If they don't print, the banking system collapses. The Fed chair is trapped. And when a central bank is trapped, the currency dies. This is why the political news is actually financial news. The Ark Strategy is a bet against the competence of the political class. It is a recognition that there is no legislative solution to a debt problem this magnitude. You cannot legislate your way out of bankruptcy. You can only default. And the billionaires know that the United States is going to default. It might be a soft default, where they pay you back in worthless, printed dollars, or a hard default, where they stop payments. But the result is the same. Your purchasing power evaporates. The distraction techniques are in full swing. Notice how the media is focused on culture wars, scandals, and celebrity gossip? That is by design. They are keeping the public angry about nonsense so they don't look at the Treasury yield curve. They are keeping you fighting with your neighbor so you don't notice that the bank vault is empty. The billionaires don't watch the news. They watch the liquidity. And the liquidity is drying up. Let's talk about the central bank digital currency, CBDC, threat, because this is the ultimate political endgame. The legislation for a digital dollar is already written. It is sitting in a drawer in Washington, waiting for a crisis big enough to justify its release. The billionaires know that when the banking system crashes in early 2026, the government will offer the CBDC as the solution. They will say, your bank failed, but don't worry. Here is a direct account with the federal. But there is a catch. The CBDC is programmable money. It is the end of financial privacy. The billionaires are building their arks with assets that cannot be programmed. Gold cannot be turned off by a bureaucrat. Bitcoin in a cold wallet cannot be frozen by an executive order. The rush into these assets in December 2025 is a vote of no confidence in the coming surveillance state. They are opting out of the digital prison before the bars are installed. The window to act is tied to the congressional calendar. The new session of Congress begins in January. The rhetoric will heat up immediately. The credit rating agencies, Fitch, Moody's, S&P, are already signaling a downgrade of U.S. debt. When that downgrade hits, the algorithmic trading bots will dump US Treasuries, sending interest rates to the moon. This is the death spiral. The higher rates go, the more the government has to print to pay interest, which makes inflation worse, which drives rates higher. The billionaires have seen this movie before in emerging markets. They saw it in Argentina. They saw it in Venezuela. They saw it in Weimar Germany. They know that mathematics always wins in the end. The United States has enjoyed the exorbitant privilege of the world reserve currency for 80 years, but the abuse of that privilege has reached its limit. The Ark is the only vessel that can float when the dollar loses its status. So, what does this mean for you right now? It means you have to ignore the politician who tells you the fundamentals of our economy are strong. That is a lie. The fundamentals are horrific. The deficit is out of control. The debt is unpayable. The banking system is insolvent. The only thing holding it together is confidence. And confidence is a very fragile thing. It works until it doesn't. The billionaires are not waiting for the State of the Union address. They are not waiting for the election results. They are acting on the certainty of the debt math. They are moving now because liquidity is still available. In a crisis, liquidity disappears. You can't sell your stocks when the market is limit down. You can't withdraw your cash when the bank doors are locked. You can't move your money to gold when the dealers have no inventory. The political trigger is set for January. The Fiscal Responsibility Act will fail. The debt ceiling standoff will panic the markets. And the Ark will be the only safe place left. You are watching the fuse burn down. The billionaires are already covering their ears. Are you still standing next to the dynamite expecting a different result? We have established the why. We have established the when. Now, in these final minutes, we must focus exclusively on the how. The Ark is not a metaphor. It is a specific collection of assets that you must acquire before January 15th, 2026. The billionaires have already completed 90% of their allocation. You are playing catch-up, but if you act with precision and speed, you can still secure a seat. This is the manual for survival when the paper world burns. The first plank of the Ark is silver. I told you earlier about the industrial shortage, but you need to understand the squeeze that is coming in January. The billionaires are not buying silver ETFs like SLV. They know those are paper promises that will be settled in cash when the inventory runs dry. They are draining the physical vaults. The COMEX is bleeding silver at a rate that is mathematically unsustainable. Why? Because when the currency collapses, silver becomes the transactional money for everyday needs. You can't buy a loaf of bread with a gold bar. You can with a silver coin. The second plank of the Ark is gold, but specifically sovereign gold. Central banks bought more gold in 2024 and 2025 than at any time since 1967. China, Russia, India, Poland, Singapore, they are dumping dollars and stacking gold bars. You won't have access to your box. The government has seized gold from safety deposit boxes before. FDR did it in 1933. The billionaires are using private, non-bank vaults in jurisdictions like Texas, the Cayman Islands, and Switzerland. You should look for private depository storage or a high-grade safe in your own home. The third plank, and perhaps the most explosive, is Bitcoin. But you have to treat Bitcoin correctly. The billionaires are not trading it on Coinbase or Binance. They are treating it as digital property. They are moving it to hardware wallets, cold storage devices that are completely disconnected from the internet. This is the only asset in the world that you can carry across a border in your head by memorizing 12 words. In a world of capital controls, which are coming in 2026, Bitcoin is freedom. When the government says you can only take $5,000 out of the country, your gold is heavy. Your real estate is immobile. Your cash is confiscated. But your Bitcoin travels with you. The institutional wall of money hitting Bitcoin in December 2025 is blinding. BlackRock and Fidelity have absorbed more Bitcoin than is being mined. The supply shock is here. The billionaires are front-running the moment when Bitcoin becomes the global neutral reserve asset. The fourth plank is productive land. This is the ultimate hedge against starvation and supply chain collapse. You might not be able to buy a 50,000-acre ranch like Mark Zuckerberg, but you can buy a few acres outside a major city. Or you can invest in farmland REITs that own the dirt. The goal is to own something that produces what humans need, not what they want. People can stop buying iPhones. They cannot stop eating. The billionaire portfolio for 2026 is radically different from the traditional 60-40 split. It looks like this: 40% precious metals, gold/silver, 30% real assets, land/energy, 20% Bitcoin, and 10% cash for short-term liquidity. This is the Ark allocation. It is designed to survive a 90% drop in equities and a 50% devaluation of the currency. It is not designed to make you rich in dollars. It is designed to make you rich in purchasing power when the dollar dies. Now, let's talk about the timeline again, because the clock is your enemy. You have 11 days. Why 11 days? Because after January 1st, the new tax year begins, and the institutional rebalancing happens. The pension funds will wake up. The hedge funds will return from holiday, and the volume will explode. The prices you see today on silver and Bitcoin are holiday prices. They are low liquidity illusions. When the big money returns in January to face the debt ceiling crisis, the liquidity vacuum will suck prices upward instantly. The billionaires have been accumulating for 24 months. They bought the dip. They bought the sideways chop. They are done. They are sitting on their hands, waiting for the crowd to panic. You are the crowd. If you wait until the news headlines confirm the crisis, you are too late. You will be trying to buy insurance while your house is already on fire. The insurance company, the market, will not sell it to you. Think about the bail-in risk again. The legislation allows banks to convert your deposits into equity. That means if you have $100,000 in the bank and the bank fails, they can legally say, "Here is $100,000 worth of stock in our failed bank. Good luck. Your money is gone." The Ark Strategy requires you to minimize your cash in the banking system to the absolute minimum needed for bills. Everything else must be moved to assets with no counterparty risk. This is a transfer of wealth. Wealth is never destroyed. It is merely transferred. In 2026, wealth will transfer from those who hold paper, stocks, bonds, fiat currency, to those who hold real things: gold, silver, land, Bitcoin. The billionaires intend to be on the receiving end of that transfer. They want to buy your house for 10 ounces of gold when you are desperate to sell. Don't let them. Be the one holding the gold. The psychological pressure to do nothing will be immense. The media will tell you everything is fine. Your friends will call you crazy. Your financial advisor will tell you that you are unbalanced. The billionaires don't care about being called crazy. They care about survival. Was Noah crazy for building the ark when the sun was shining? Of course he was. Until it started raining. And then he was the genius. It is starting to rain. The drops are small right now. A bank failure here, a supply chain disruption there, a spike in interest rates. But the deluge is coming. The debt math guarantees it. The political gridlock guarantees it. The billionaire behavior confirms it. You have the blueprint. You have the date. You have the asset list. The gangway is lifting. The engines are rumbling. The ark is leaving the harbor. You can stand on the pier and hope the government saves you. Or you can step on board, and take control of your destiny. The choice is yours, but you must make it before January 15th, 2026. After that, you are swimming with the sharks. Good luck.